photographic probe send out to photograph Saturn and its rings and its moons and send the photos back to Earth. And recently it completed its mission. It sent back amazing pictures of Saturn, of the rings of Saturn, crystal clear imagery. And then NASA shared those pictures with the world. But is that actually what happened? And is that actually possible in any way? No. No. Most people just assume that Cassini sent back JPEG type images to NASA from Saturn, and it was just snapping pictures and sending like an email through the vastness of space, JPEG images. And then the NASA scientists were just opening the email, downloading the image, and there we go, that's Saturn. Except that's not how it worked. Cassini took images of Saturn, but then it transformed it into data that it then beamed through interplanetary space and then through our atmosphere, through the Van Allen belts, through the plasma shield that NASA found around our planet several years back, through the atmosphere, through the dust, into the NASA offices. And then they took that information and took some very skilled artists, and the artists used the information that was beamed back from Cassini to create these fantastic images of Saturn and its moons. I forget. Very much like the camera I'm using now, the Cassini is taking a photograph of Saturn, Saturn's rings. What's happening is the light from the sun is bouncing off the rings of Saturn and into the Cassini camera, and then onto the detector, the light detector sensor, and that creates the image in the same way that the camera I'm using now is doing. But here is a crucial factor that's required for an image to be formed in a camera that NASA is curiously not addressing, and none of the scientists, astronomers, astrophysicists, popular media reporting on these things, nobody's talking about this, nobody's brought this up, except for me. You can't just say, I don't really understand how that will work. You're a citizen of the world, and as a citizen of the world, you have a responsibility to make sure that knowledge is valued and truth is the standard by which we separate knowledge from belief. A belief might be true, it might be false. Knowledge, by definition, should be true. And so if NASA is telling us, here's an image of the rings of Saturn taken by the Cassini spacecraft in orbit around Saturn, and that becomes part of the human knowledge, then it should be true. Otherwise, we're spreading lies, because these images aren't being presented as part of a religious belief system, iconography. These images are being presented as truth for not just North American culture, not just Americans, but the world over. And so if they're not true, then, so here's the problem. In order for a camera to take a picture, the light has to fall onto the sensors in such a way as to form an image. And in order to do that, it has to be consciously observed. It has to be observed by a conscious being. See where the problem lies here? If there's no conscious observer observing the light that's falling into the camera and then falling onto the sensor in the camera, then the light won't travel as photons, as particles. The light will travel as waves that interfere with each other. And so if you don't have a conscious observer observing the light going into the camera, then on your camera's detector sensors, you'll get an interference pattern. You'll never get an image. A camera out by Saturn trying to take a picture of the light bouncing off the rings of Saturn would not be able to form an image without a conscious observer there to collapse the photon probabilities, the probability wave distribution of photons into particles that can then form an image on the sensors. Without a conscious observer, you have no image. What you have are just interference patterns. The act of the first person at NASA to open the image file that the computer has created from digital data, from ones and zeros, somehow affects the past. That observation of the image itself goes backwards in time and affects the photon probability distribution wave at the Cassini spacecraft out at Saturn and collapses them into photons in the past.